Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Unmasking with Cindy and Sarah. And I could not be more excited because my old dear friend, she's not an old friend in age-wise, but she's one of my older friends from back in the day when our kiddos were little. Jen Miller is on with us this week. And when we first decided we were going to do an episode on creativity, I immediately thought of her because she has an amazing pottery practice that she has started, and she's going to be here today to tell us all about it. But just a little backstory on Jen and I. So we met back in 2010 when I was living in Las Vegas, and we had the same age kiddos. And so we were all looking for community and connection. And we joined a mom's club, and it was just a bunch of us who were staying at home when our kids were little. And so Jen has 3 boys. I have 3 boys. And so we would just connect and spend many afternoons at the park when we were in the thick of parenting littles. And so those are some of my memories of just this community that I so desperately needed because I had no family that lived out there. And when I met Jen and then a couple of the other girls in our group, we just became instant friends. And so we've stayed in touch all these years. Jen still resides in Henderson, Nevada, which is just a city, for those of y'all that don't know that, right outside of Las Vegas. And so I'm going to have Jen just start us off by just telling us a little bit about her story, how she came into this creative art form of making pottery. So thanks, Jen, for being here.
Thank
Yay.
you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here.
I'm so excited for you, Cindy, to have this amazing podcast because it's actually helped me so much. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Well, so yes, just jump right in wherever you feel comfortable and tell us a little bit about your story. Where did you grow up? How did you find this craft?
I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and actually in Corrales, which is kind of like a suburb, which is kind of a little bit more rural. My grandparents had horses, but New Mexico as a whole is such a artistic place, and it's always, to me, just like the beauty of the art there has always been something I grew up with and always was around since, a small child. It's something that I love, but got married real young at 23 to UNM, go Lobos.
Yes.
Started having children at like 27. And because of my husband's job, we moved around a little bit. We went to Pennsylvania for just a year and a half, had our second son there after we had one in Albuquerque. And then he got this opportunity with Panera Bread in Las Vegas. And we moved to Vegas in 2008. And that's where I met Cindy. And so that's kind of like a quick how I got here.
What did you study at UNM? I don't think I've ever asked you.
I changed my major a couple times, but ended with mass media and journalism.
Okay.
And the reason for that was I took a few advertising classes, and it was just the creative part of advertising to me was just so cool, editing videos. And of course, none of it's relevant now because it was a long time ago. But so I just loved mass media and journalism. But as soon as I got married and we started having kids, I wanted to be a mom. And so I became a substitute teacher in Albuquerque and loved that, loved teaching.
Yeah.
And kind of went back to it after my kids were a little bit older here in Henderson for Clark County School District. So I've been a sub here for quite a few years and sometimes did long-term subbing. Loved the long-term subbing when it was art. And in fact, I was going to possibly get a position as an art teacher here. It kind of fell through. But, just doing the creative stuff for me was always like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to that at some point. And, once your kids are a little bit older, you really want to do something that brings you joy and like you feel passionate about. And that's kind of how I started, doing pottery and doing stuff for myself because, being primarily a stay-at-home mom for 20 years was my life.
Yeah.
And I was always, PTA, team mom, completely all engulfed in my kids. And, now looking back, I'm like, I don't know if that was wise. Just because you really need something for yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that I actually really found that. And it's kind of funny because actually in high school, went with my friend to her pottery class after school and was just completely enamored of it.
Yeah.
But I was already a senior and it was too late for me to take any classes. So I'm a senior in high school and I asked my parents for a potter wheel and they got me a little Fisher Price, and I'm 18 or something. I'm like, that's not what I wanted, but they weren't going to, buy something for me that I haven't even done.
Sure.
Anyways, so that was my first, like, oh my God, I really like pottery. But then during COVID or during quarantine, I know we all binge watched a lot of shows.
Yes.
And so I watched the uh, British Pottery Throwdown, which I've never seen that.
I haven't.
I haven't. I've seen the baking one, but I've never seen the pottery.
Yeah, so it was on. It's not there anymore.
Oh, man.
Are they nice to each other? I love the British baking show because they're so nice compared to like American shows.
Yes.
And they help each other. It's wonderful. Okay.
Such a different
dynamic.
Different culture.
Yeah. So I binged that in 2020. I was obsessed. And one of the judges would cry looking at a piece of art, and then I would start crying. And it was just kind of like, why am I crying over this like teacup set? It's so silly, but I was obsessed with it. So I ended up taking a class at the Multi-Gen Center. And,
wow, I do.
And we still had masks on in 21. And I started taking a class and just completely fell in love with it and wanted more and more, even though I was terrible and,
Yeah. So it took some time to try to create and, kind of gain some expertise, because I was trying to think back, like, I don't remember you doing pottery when I knew you or when I met you rather in Henderson. But what I do remember is your home was always so artistic. Like you just had this like eclectic style of these bold colors. And part of that I can imagine was your upbringing living in New Mexico and having that culture and that brightness or design. And so I always knew you to be a very creative, artistic person. But then I start seeing your stuff on Instagram with pottery and I'm like, what is happening here? Like, where has she been hiding this the whole time? So it's really cool to hear your story of how it kind of was born from COVID and kind of really leaning into that and learning this craft. Yeah.
I think during COVID, and I know a lot of you guys and everyone kind of reevaluated your life at that point and said, what do I really want to do?
Yeah.
And I think that was something I was like, why am I waiting till my kids grow up to try this?
Yeah.
Do it now.
And I think too with COVID is we were all just so isolated. There was no real connection. And as a mom, you never got a break because you couldn't go anywhere. And so you really had to look at, what sets you apart from just being a mom to your child? What makes you happy? What can you do to kind of release some of that you're holding in? Because it's not normal for us to not feel connected to others. Like that is very isolating.
It was.
And so finding an outlet like art, something that you love to do that's very tactile, that's amazing for the brain, right? Because it allows our brain to relax and to calm down and then to also like produce those neurotransmitters that we need, the dopamine, the serotonin that we naturally need because we're not getting connection with others. So I think COVID just really helped a lot of us tap into that because we were so isolated and we needed to find some way to relieve that anxiety, which, I mean, COVID, if you think about it, it was a huge trauma for everyone. I think we're all different now because of COVID.
For sure. And actually, it was the first time I had seen people because we had to wear masks I feel like the first few months of my pottery class. And it was hard to, listen to the teacher or what, it was just kind of, you're already like hovering over clay and you're trying to breathe and, but seeing other people kind of for the first time that was my first back into the world in my pottery class.
Wow.
And it was just kind of like, it felt so good. It really, because you just needed to see other people.
Sure.
Yeah. And sometimes just like sitting next to someone. Yes, we have our families there, our children, everything, but there's something about connecting with other people that you're not with like 24/7. Like you love your family. Everybody kind of has their routine and their roles in the home. So it's nice because instead of just being mom or wife, you could be Jen in the pottery class. You may not have to talk to everybody around you, but you're just Jen, who you started out with, right? You were born Jen. You'll always be Jen. But when you're a mom, sometimes that can get lost in doing all of the things.
Absolutely. So. Not to go back to your earlier podcast, but the first ones that you guys did about your kids growing up just really hit home for me, because you kind of go through a bit of a crisis when your kids get a little bit older. You're just not in control of anything anymore. And finding something that brings a little bit of control to your life, and especially something like art, just can kind of balance you in this chaotic time in your life. Because I don't know about Cindy, but it is, to me, I think, the hardest parenting time for me. And not because my kids are doing great. It's because adulting is hard. And now we're trying to make our kids adults, or we're getting to that point. It brings me that peace that I need. Yeah. I'm going to take my mind off my kids. And really helped. So
yeah. Absolutely.
It's such an emotional release to art, which is like play. We talk about play, and as a play therapist, I always say, play is our language, toys are our words. Well, art is our language, the tools that we use, whether that's clay, whether that is, paint, music, anything. There's so many different ways to emotionally release that feels safe, especially for internalizers. And women typically are. We tend to internalize our feelings, our anxiety, our depression, because we've been conditioned to do that. So we don't want to ruffle any feathers. So it's such a great emotional release. And what you just said too about parenting, I remember when I had my daughter and telling Cindy how hard it was, the sleep schedule. If I could go back in time, that was the easiest, guys. I mean, I feel like every time I'm like, oh, great, we've unlocked a new level of parenting here. Because I remember saying to her, I just want her to be like 2 or 3, because then she can talk to me and it's going to be so much easier. And then I was like, okay, like the easiest it was when she was sleeping every 2 hours and I would give her a bottle, and I loved on her, because I'm telling you, every time, even as they get older, it's not till 18. Yeah. It's forever. Yeah. And that's amazing, but it is forever in every level. I think as a mother, your heart is in the world. Your child is your heart. So you're going to worry. Yeah. And it's just more things you have less control over the older they get.
Yes. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah. And every age is a trade-off. You're like, oh my God, I love that my kid can drive me around and he's got his own personality, or, but then you worry about, his relationships or his girlfriends, and, everything is a trade-off. Yes. Sometimes I look at pictures and, Cindy's so much a part of those memories. I look at pictures of them when they were small, and I truly will just burst out crying. Yeah. Because it's just over in some ways. I mean, this age is great, but sometimes you just think, wow, that was fast.
So fast. And, Jen, I think back to those years of when we were dripping with children at the park and we were all getting to know one another and looking at each other and saying, this is so hard. This is so overwhelming. This is nerve-wracking. We don't have a lot of family that lives out here. So we were really leaning on one another for support. And really, the whole reason why we started this series on creativity and play was, I think, born from a place of, Sarah and I have been very open about the fact that we both struggle with anxiety. And one of the most helpful things that my therapist has ever helped me to understand is that play and creativity is essential for managing anxiety. And so I wonder if you could explain to our listeners, for you personally, when you're working with clay, what is it specifically that helps you manage the anxiety about that? So like, how does it calm your mind? What do you notice about that? Do you notice kind of like physical changes in your body? Just talk a little bit about that if you could.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I listened to a podcast yesterday. I can't remember the name of the lady, but she said, you can't be anxious and creative, and you can't be creative and anxious.
Mm.
So I do think that as much as being creative sometimes can relieve anxiety, you know, when you first get started, if you have emotions while you're doing anything creative, it may not come out because your mind and body are just one. And if you have that anxiety in you, if you're having a bad day, and I have seen potters that are so experienced, like 20, 30 years experience, and they just are like, it's not happening today. They flop every piece and they're like, I can't do it.
Wow.
Because they know that their mind isn't there. So in the same way, you know, when you are in the zone and you're feeling it, everything else does wash away. And it really feels great because your anxiety is completely relieved for those moments.
Wow.
And it does take a while to get there sometimes because you can be really frustrated with art or anything, you know, especially if you're just like your expectations are so high. And I always go into it going, you know, I have a passion for this, but no expectations. Because if you just think that you're going to be amazing or this or that, you know, it's just not going to happen. And you just have to be happy with what you did and what you tried. And the process, really, the process to me is kind of the best part of it, and not worried about the end product. So I do think that your mind and body is just so connected as far as art goes. And you have to always kind of put yourself in a zone. And that's when the anxiety releases and it really benefits you, just mind and body, for sure.
Almost kind of like a flow state is what you're describing to me, where it's like it gets you out of that left brain logical space, and it really helps integrate the right brain, which is kind of where we hold our creativity and our emotion and all of that. So that's, I guess, would be my true definition of integration. Is what you're describing.
It's so true. Yeah. You just, the flow state in anything that you do. I even talk about my kids with their sports or their golf or whatever. And you kind of are in that flow or you're not. And of course you don't want your passion or your side activity to bring more anxiety, because it can.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, that should be discussed too, because sometimes, you know, people get hard on themselves. And you're like, this is what I'm doing for fun. Why am I so hard on myself?
Yes.
So just to not take it too seriously is the best approach, and to not worry about the outcome, and, you know, try to get into that flow state where you're just feeling good and it's the process. So that's kind of how I feel about it. And I've had way more failures doing anything pottery related than, you know, good outcomes. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I love that you say that, because I feel like, especially if you're someone who struggles and internalizes anxiety, you tend to be a perfectionist, where you almost like halt yourself if you can't do it perfectly. I know that's Cindy just raised her hand. We're both the same way. And so I think that that's great, because what it's teaching you too in that moment when you aren't doing it perfectly, you know, is the neuroscience behind it, is you are, you know, the creative practices are activating all the different parts of the brain, even though it's maybe not turning out exactly how you wanted. And that's when we can calm that, you know, part of our brain, the amygdala, down, and then start, you know, being able to open up that creativity a little bit once we've calmed that. And I think I mentioned this the other day. I was listening to something, I don't know if it was a podcast or what, you know, there's so much information out there. I'm on all these parenting things, but I started using it with my daughter, where I will tell her, she'll say, I can't do this. And I'll say, you're right. It's new. You're not going to be good at it. I was like, but the more you practice, you will. You're right. It's going to be hard at first. And I think it's taking that pressure off of, you know, it's not going to be the easiest, but as long as you keep doing it and telling yourself that, instead of being like, it has to be amazing, it has to be the best.
Absolutely. I actually heard somebody once say that an artist is somebody not with talent, but with passion. And I think that's kind of how you have to look at it, because the amount of failures that you have in anything that you do are going to be extensive, and you just have to kind of push through them. And if you have so much passion to keep going, that's when you get rewarded for all the practice and stuff. And what is it, 10,000 hours or something is what they say you have to do something to be good at it, 10,000 hours. And, you know, like I said, if you don't have expectations, I think that's the best way to approach a lot of things in life, to be honest.
Sure.
And just be happy with the attempt, you know?
Yeah.
Because nothing is ever going to come out how you want. And in fact, I remember, did Cindy say something about like a kiln project?
That it blew up?
Yeah.
Yes.
And do you know how often that happens, Cindy? It's just, it happens all the time. In fact,
it makes me feel so much better now.
It does. In
Dang
fact,
that art teacher.
He should have told you it's not your fault.
Right. She needs some play therapy.
So that's common, huh? That it blows up in a kiln.
So there's a thing in the potter world where there's, you know, you put stuff in the kiln and you say, okay, I'm going to pray to the kiln gods. Because, you know, it's a very sometimes small chance that things even come out, even the color that you want.
Oh, wow.
You know, they might blow up. There's just so many factors because it is chemistry. Yeah. You know, I have a kiln that gets to 2000 degrees, and there's a lot of other factors going on at that time. You know, my garage could be cold, or the glaze I have on is terrible, or so, you know, whatever comes out, and you just have to kind of roll with it, you know?
Yeah. So in a way, you have to practice like a little bit of surrender through this whole thing and let go of the control. That's hard.
So hard.
Yes. I'm wondering too, Jen, I know you had talked about how COVID was really the catalyst for this pottery starting for you. And I'm wondering too, if there is an example that sticks out in your mind of a time or an experience that you were going through where you were like, gosh, this is a hard emotion to just sit and think about, but I can really go through this situation or this emotion I'm having, and I noticed a shift. Do you have anything that comes to mind? Like a time in your life where like your pottery really helped move you through something?
Well, yeah, for sure. This whole era, I think, of change in my life, as far as, you know, having grown kids, you know, the closer I get to 50, which is only a couple years away, it's really helping me cope with it, because I think that we're really kind of coming to this age where, or at least I am, where I just am kind of tired of the fakery, or you know, you just want to be yourself. And I think that it's vulnerable to be yourself and not care about the things that maybe you cared about in your 30s, and worry about like, what do people think of this or that? And so for me, pottery has kind of been like, you kind of have to not care what people think, you know. As far as selling stuff, you know, I'm at markets, and, you know, some people may like it, some people may not. And I have to get a thick skin on, it's not everyone's cup of tea. It's what you like. So you can't please everybody. You know, I've had people come up to me and say, you need more red or pink, and I personally make stuff in earth tones. So I'm kind of like, you know, all right, I just listen to them and move it along. You know, so I think that for me, this age and this time in my life where I'm really trying to just be authentic and just kind of not, you know, be bogged down with other people's opinions, pottery helps because I like it. And you have to remind yourself, this is what I like, and this is what I like to do. And other people's opinions of it doesn't really matter as long as it's something that makes me happy.
Yeah. I love that. And it comes from such an intrinsic place. And that's what we want, right? That's what we want for our kids, is we want our kids to feel, you know, you don't have to please everybody. It's how you feel about it. And I think, again, how we were just so conditioned, in school, we start out playing, right? They have centers that you can go to, you do art, but then as you move on, it gets less and less, and there's value put on everything. Are you coloring it this way? Are you in the lines? Did you get an A on it? Did you finish everything has such a value. So we start becoming more rigid every single day. So we lose that creativity. We lose all of that because we're just trying to like follow the rules and do the right thing and fall in line and be perfect. And that's so exhausting. And I think as women, I don't know about you guys, but when I hit 40, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I am done. And I wish I knew all the stuff I know now in my 20s, because I would have done so many, just like traveled and not been so terrified and all of these things. But we're just so conditioned to be what society wants us to be. And I think our generation and the generations after us are now going, we're done. Yeah. I think our kids are lucky because our kids, as much as social media is like such a, it can be an addiction and false sense of dopamine and all these things, there's so much more research out there and so much more information that makes it more acceptable to talk about these things and to just be like, this is what makes me happy. And we just didn't have all of that. So we were all just kind of raw dogging life, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
I don't know.
For sure.
If I've said that, I'm sorry. Here I am.
I like it.
So it sounds like too the art of sculpting has really helped you with recovering people pleaser part of you.
Yeah.
That will say, I'm going to be so concerned and consumed with this person's feedback that it's going to change the way that I now do clay, when it's like, no, cool. Thanks for your feedback. And I am a person that likes to do earth tones and I know what I like.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
You have to shut out the haters, or, you know,
do.
And you just have to kind of always think about, who are you and what do you like? And making stuff it's all about you. And so, pleasing people, that is definitely one thing that I've stopped doing, or I've tried. I don't know that everyone ever completely gets fully recovered from being a people pleaser, but I do think that you are aware of it and you try to not let that come into your consciousness and try to. So I think I've definitely learned that from doing this, that, it's not for everybody, and that's okay. It's for me.
I love that. I love that so much. I just think that there's so many lessons in this practice, from, again, self-management of your own anxiety to also how you approach the world outwardly, right? So that can be so healing for somebody who just needs a creative outlet in that way. And also too, Jen, can you talk about how you incorporate this regularly? I know you shared you have your own pottery wheel, like kind of your own little studio, huh?
That's so
I have a
cool.
little studio in my garage. I have a kiln and a wheel and lots of clay and stuff. And what I've really kind of found out is there's kind of a big potter community, probably in every city. So I'm a member of the Nevada Clay Guild, and we do things together, socials, and we'll do raku firings where we put pots in like the dirt and wrap it in like wires and stuff. And it's a very old tradition of pottery. So it's really the people that I've gotten to know too in this potter world. And to be honest, I feel like a groupie because I'm just enamored of their talents. A lot of these people have been doing it for 20, 30 years, and they're just completely amazing. And I'm kind of like the guy on the show. I want to cry when I look at their pieces. And so the community really is huge. We go to ClayCon in Utah, and, there's little artist colonies all over the place that people don't even know about. And I found out other people have studios in their homes, like even in my neighborhood. So it's kind of crazy when you learn how many people are doing this and you find each other, because we have such a bond.
Oh, how cool.
So cool. Love. Yeah, I love art because it's so subjective, and especially from a therapy point of view, it's amazing because you can work through so many emotions if you're an internalizer when you're working with your hands, being very
Oh, yeah.
tactile. It's so grounding, like
Yes.
almost like a grounding technique to
Yes.
kind of, let those feelings out in a safe space, because it's not always comfortable to go and like talk about all the things that you've been through, but sometimes you just need to cry. And I imagine working with pottery and working with your hands, there are huge, like Cindy was saying, huge emotions where you just might start crying or you
Oh,
might feel
yeah.
something. And then this beautiful thing that you didn't even know comes out of it. And you made something beautiful out of something that maybe you were struggling with internally. And that can be, I think, very healing in itself.
It's funny that you say grounding, because my New Year's resolution was to touch grass, as they say.
I love it.
Hug a tree, touch grass, grounding.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is something about being in nature and
Yeah.
even working with mud, which is essentially what clay is,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that it just brings you closer to the earth. And I don't want to sound all hippie or anything, but it truly, it really, it touches you inside. It's like something I need, to be
Yeah.
outside or to, go on a hike or something like that. But even just touching clay has such a healing, therapeutic quality to it, that I do think it's something that you can't even put into words as far as how it makes you feel. It makes you feel better. Just like they say, hugging a tree makes you feel better. You don't exactly know why,
Mm-hmm.
but it does. There's
Yes.
studies.
Yes.
Grounding, walking on, the grass without shoes, which I don't know. I don't think that's exactly what you're talking about, but grounding to me is another one of my New Year's resolutions is to
No, I was just thinking of that because when my daughter was young, she never liked shoes. She still doesn't to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And, people are always like, you need to put shoes on. You need to put shoes on. Those boomers out there, they're really big on putting shoes and clothes on. I would just let her like, no, let her just like well, she's not hurting anything. I think there's just something to just feeling it, your skin, just feeling and connecting with the earth.
for sure.
It's just such a powerful way to work through things.
Yeah,
I just
no,
think it's beautiful.
yeah, I love that. I was just thinking as you were talking, Jen, because I know you had shared that you're more of an introvert, and I've known you to be more of an introvert, but it's funny because I'm also an introvert, but maybe I mask it. I'm more extroverted on the outside, but really I am more introverted and I'm an emotional person as well. And sometimes I think to people who are maybe more introverted and um emotional, they need that grounding even that much more.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that not everybody could benefit from it, because I do think it's a practice that everybody could benefit from. But I think especially if you
Yeah.
are a person that needs to recharge on your own, you need a lot of alone time, you need that kind of creative outlet. And that is one thing I miss about living in Vegas is the nature part of it. Not that we don't have nature in Texas, but it's different when you go outside and you just see the mountains and the view. I love the desert. I love
do
it.
too. I love Cindy and I love it. I want to live in Arizona. It's like my dream.
Yeah.
I love it
Yeah.
there.
I miss that
There's
so
something
much.
about the desert sky to me that is just so amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, in New Mexico and Las Vegas and Arizona, it's, the colors of the sky when it's sunset is just, to me, everything. I just I love desert sky. But yeah, the being out in nature, and I know people don't think of Las Vegas as a naturey place, but it is in some
It is.
places, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's some amazing, we live kind of by a little lake over here, and it's just getting outside is so therapeutic, getting in the sun.
Yeah.
And I'm just really grateful that we have about 10 months where it's nice to be outside.
Yes.
Maybe just not August.
You get used to it.
Heat out.
I know, you get used to it.
But other than that, it's really nice to be outside here. I do believe that you need like vitamin D. It's just so important for your mental health.
Yes.
Going to get that sunshine, or however you need to do it, as far as grass or even clay, like I said. But
yeah, feel connected to something outside of yourself is just so beautiful. And it's funny just talking about art and all of this. I had read an article, and it was the scientist at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and they had, did you read that about Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 reduced cancer cells And when they played it,
Really?
20% in people within a few days, but kept all of the healthy cells. It didn't work with Mozart, but for some reason, Beethoven,
Wow.
I
That is
don't know, but they're looking at that. And I remember, I went through a really hard time after I got married, and my mom was like, let's have a garden. And she was like, play some music. And it was really just amazing playing the music, seeing the plants even thrive off of it.
oh
Mhm.
my gosh.
Thrive off of like playing classical music, but there's just something to it of just playing music, having it in the background, working with your hands, connecting with nature. I mean, I think it's all so healing in a lot of ways.
Music Symphony number 5. I'm writing that down.
Yeah, I am. And
Yeah.
I go back to like, thousands of years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't have all of this. Like, it was the earth. We
Yeah.
all survived from the earth, and we connected with the earth. And I think it's going back to those roots. And like you said, clay is very much like mud. And I imagine, utilizing your hands within that to take out aggression or to
Mhm.
feel certain things, like, and just have it, even fumble in your hands. It's just the smoothness of it, the
Yeah.
sensory. I mean, even with kids who are neurodivergent and sensory seeking, there's so many benefits to art and art therapy and utilizing those different senses. So I just think it's so cool. Just art. And I mean, we could talk about,
Oh, I could talk
forever.
about this all day.
Well, I don't know if you ever watch ASMR videos. There's a lot with
Love
clay.
them.
I don't know if you see the ones on the wheel that people will show, and you hear the throwing down of the clay, the water going over it, the pulling up and the spinning of the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And just there's so many sounds that come with it, and it to me is extremely relaxing. I could watch those videos all day.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how these things that you kind of get back to. I mean, people were doing clay in the Middle Ages. I mean, it's such an old thing that it's like when you get back to those roots, or you get back to these ancient techniques,
Mm-hmm.
it makes you feel, I don't want to sound cheesy, but like your humanity kind of
Yeah.
that, this is where we
Absolutely.
started. And not only
Mhm.
that, what I love about, pottery is that it's going to be here after we're gone.
Yeah.
A lot of it is, here forever. It's petrified, and it's going to be here for a long time. So there's
Ooh, that
something
kind of just
about
gave me
that.
chills.
I know. I love that.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't think of it like that, Jen. That's really
Art is a
cool.
subjective piece of yourself you can leave. I love that. That is
yes,
beautiful. It's a story.
it truly is. Especially when I started, I gave mugs. I'm a big Hispanic family. I gave mugs to all of my aunts, all of my cousins. They all are like, I have my Jen Miller mug. And there's
Oh,
something that comes with like knowing people are drinking their coffee out of something that you made, or that they're going to have that forever, even when I'm an old lady, or, that makes me feel good. I know that
Oh my
sounds
gosh. I'm
like
getting
I'm
a
having, immortality
yeah.
issues here, or mortality issues.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a mug, Jen. That is my thing.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go, I get a mug because they make me so happy to just remember where I've been.
Yes.
It's like a beautiful piece of art wherever I go. And every morning when I have my cup of coffee, I pick out my fun little mug. I'm ordering one. I'm ordering a
Let
mug.
me see. Are you drinking out of it right now?
Out of a couple, because I have a cold, so I'm trying to drink a lot of
Oh
hot
my
water.
gosh, I love a mug.
So
But
cool.
I will tell you, there is something about eating out of something handmade too, that just it feels better.
Mhm.
There's a couple of nice restaurants here in Vegas, and they have all handmade dishes.
Oh,
And there's
wow.
something about eating off of a
That's cool.
handmade plate, or, drinking out of a handmade cup, that just
Mm-hmm.
to me feels good.
It tells a
Mhm.
story.
It
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 really
does. It does. You kind of almost feel connected to the hands that made it.
love this.
I know.
I did not think of it like that before our conversation today. So that's so cool that I'm going to have a whole new perspective on that, moving forward. I also think, Jen, to go back to the community aspect of it that you were talking about, I mean, that's how we came together, right?
Mhm.
That's how you and I met, was
Yeah.
community over a common thing that we were going through together. And that's how we got through those early years of raising little kids without a lot of family around us. And it's been really cool for me to kind of see you shift into this pottery community that you're
Yeah.
doing now, this artist community. And so how that sense of connection in the art
Yeah.
community in Nevada helped with your mental health.
It's huge. It's huge. When people love the same thing that you love,
Mm-hmm.
there's still a bond to them. You kind of
Yeah.
can talk about like silly things that no one else knows. Like, what do you think of this glaze? Or,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind
Yeah.
of a weird group of us
Yes.
that are in this thing together. I mean, very eclectic group.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just so nice to meet other people that care about these things. And you kind of get to know people that you would never meet before,
Yeah.
because we don't have kids the same age and we don't have all the other things that usually bring you into a group, just your love for pottery. And that's kind of what you bond over. But it has been huge as far as I kind of am somebody who thinks you should always be in some kind of group. I've begged my kids, I'm like, join everything. And then
Yeah.
you kind of pick and choose.
Yeah.
But, Cindy and I, the moms group, helped me so much at
Yeah.
that time in my life. I mean, I couldn't have done anything without you guys because,
Same.
when you don't have family here, that becomes your family.
Yeah.
And, later just sharing interests, like, you start liking other things together, like Zumba we would go to, or
Yes.
then you meet the Zumba women.
Zumba.
And there's just, you kind of find these little groups, the Zumba girls, or, baseball moms, or PTA, or I always feel like you should put yourself out there. It's not easy, especially because
Mm-mm.
I am introverted, but putting yourself out there to meet people is something that I force myself to do.
Yeah.
And always am happy that I did it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's such a good example too for your children, is to see you doing things for yourself and putting yourself in those situations, because we can tell our children things all day, but they look at what we're doing. And so I think that
Yeah.
that's really awesome as they get older, so that they find something special for them, and groups that are separate from just husband or daughter or
Yeah.
Yeah.
sister, all those, you know what I mean? Just like
Yeah.
something where you have something fun and you're just connected.
Well,
So
I'm
I think
hoping to
that's
do it
cool.
forever too. I tease with some of my girlfriends were like, we're going to be the bingo mamas and, with our gray hair. And I know we will be, I'm in a bunko group and stuff like that. You just kind of have to join things
Mm-hmm.
and meet people that you never would before. And to me, that is the one thing that kind of, it gets you out of your anxiety a little bit, because you
Mm-hmm.
have to come out of your shell and put yourself out there. But I do think it's just so beneficial. And with older people, I'm so amazed sometimes on how active they are out here. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
doing tennis and pickleball and all this stuff. I feel like a slacker, compared to these people. So I'm just like, I'm impressed that this is a very active community here. So I just
Yeah.
definitely want to continue that road, because it's so great.
Yeah. Vegas has such an active community for sure. And I wonder if that has a lot to do with like people that retire out there, and the weather's typically, like you said, great 10 months out of the year. So that's really cool, because what I hear you saying, Jen, is that like it has taken parts of you and helped you with your identity, that like, I'm not just a mom, or I'm not just a wife. I'm
Yeah.
also a human being with interests and
Mm-hmm.
creative outlets and needs. And so from that aspect, it's really grown your sense of understanding of yourself
Yeah,
a little bit deeper.
for
Yeah.
sure. And if anything, being more introverted and being more of a homebody, it
Hmm.
just kind of forces you to get out of that, and that's not easy. I do have,
Mm-mm.
Sometimes crippling anxiety where I don't really want to leave my home.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think COVID made it worse a little bit.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I order my groceries to be delivered, and I'm
Yeah.
just such a person who loves my home, and I do want to enjoy my home. But, I'm at that point where sometimes I'm like, I don't want to drive at night. And thank goodness I have a couple kids that can drive me.
Right.
Or
Yes.
actually, a couple of my girlfriends know that I will not drive at night, so they pick me up. So I don't want to be scared of the world or just so sheltered off but if I join something, I'm like, I can't miss. And that forces me out of the house,
Yeah.
Yeah.
to
I
kind
love
of
that.
come out of my shell. So yeah, it's not easy.
No, so important. It's so important
Yeah.
to talk about it though, because I think that more and more women specifically get to that stage in their life with parenting, or even if you don't have kids, right? Like you get into your late 40s and you start nearing that halfway mark, hopefully, God willing. And we're like, oh my gosh, how do I still continue to squeeze the zest of life without becoming agoraphobe, where I just stay inside all the time. But because, as an introvert, it is easy to do that. And so, gosh, I could talk about this all day with you. I wonder if you could share, I know for those of us that are watching this and listening, for you can see behind you, Jen has some of her pieces on the shelf. I'm wondering, do you have like a specific piece or a project that you have worked on, that you're currently working on, that has really been significant in helping you understand yourself, your anxiety, just how to heal and connect?
To be honest, I don't do as many sculptural things. I basically do functional wear.
Yeah.
So my goal was to have every dish in my home be something that I made.
Oh.
So, whether it's a mug or plate or a chip and dip or bowls or whatever, that was the goal. I don't want anything manufactured in my house. I want it to all be handmade. So it's not exactly one piece, but I will say, like, if I have a get together and I can, have everything displayed on pieces, that does bring me joy and makes me happy that I can, using stuff, because I am a little bit practical. I've got that Virgo side where I don't want anything that I can't use.
Yeah.
So if it's, if I want to be able to use everything that I make. And so I do think that, probably all my mugs and knowing that people are drinking out of them every morning, that is something that really has, changed me a little bit, especially when I get messages from my friends going, make me another mug because I really like it. And we're fighting over it or, something along those lines. So.
How cool.
We're going to get mugs, Cindy.
We are getting mugs. We're going to get mugs, and we're also going to attend a pottery class at some point.
I know, we need to do it. We should, Jen, you should come do,
Tell me.
We're going to do a retreat. We should get Jen to come and
teach us how to throw clay.
I would love it. So are you in a class, Cindy? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So there is, for those of our listeners who are in the DFW area, there is a place called McKinney Art House, and I'll link that on this episode too. And they do pottery workshops. So you don't have to commit to a regular class. You can just go and try it out. And that's what I love. And so I've never done it, but I always see your stuff, like I said, on Jen Miller Ceramics on Instagram. And I see you throwing that on there and then your beautiful finished product. And I'm like, oh, I want to try that. So I'm sure it'll take me a lot of practice, but yeah. What would you tell somebody, Jen, who's hesitant to try it, but they want to try it? And maybe not even pottery. Maybe it's something like a totally different modality.
I would first say don't be discouraged, because I think even the first time I took a class, I was like, wow, this is not easy. To center clay on the wheel or just to get going. But, don't be discouraged, because I don't think there's anyone who started who just threw something up immediately.
Right.
Because it's just not one of those things. It's a tactile learning, which has to come with practice.
Yeah.
And, I still struggle with a lot of things, making super tall pieces, or, I had a teacher that was helping me make really big pieces. I'm still taking classes, actually.
Yeah.
I'm taking a hand building class, which I don't know if you guys know, that's with a slab roller, just connecting pieces. It's probably more sculptural.
Oh, cool.
So I take hand building and I take advanced throwing. So I'm never going to stop trying to learn.
We both were like advanced throwing. What is that?
Throwing. You have like a black belt in sculpting, Jen?
No, not sculpting. That's hand building. And I don't know anything about that. But throwing is what you call doing it on the wheel.
Okay.
Sorry. I keep saying that too. And yeah, throwing is on the wheel. And then hand building is just kind of slabbing out a piece and connecting it. So I prefer the motion of being on a wheel, though. There's something about it. And I think it is the therapeutic side of feeling the clay, and what that does kind of like calms you. And so
so cool.
I always think, I know this is going to be annoying, Ghost. Remember in Ghost?
Demi Moore, Patrick Swayze.
Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze and like their little love moment.
Yeah. Which now I watch that back and I'm like,
that would never
really doing that right.
Yeah, you're like her. Yeah. See?
You're critiquing her form.
Somebody made it for her and she came and just put her fingers on it later.
Oh, that's so funny.
I
That's
always
so
think
funny.
of that though. I'm like, wow, it's so like cool and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
It almost make it romantic to be covered in clay.
I know.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Jen has also graciously offered to be part of this
Yes.
giveaway that we're
Yay.
doing. And this is our
We're so
first ever
excited.
giveaway on the pod. So
Yay.
I'm so excited that Jen has offered it. Let me see.
Well, I have a couple of these speckle glasses, or I have or mugs, and I have maybe a twisted handle mug.
Oh,
Yeah, I would love for somebody to win a
a
mug.
mug, a Jen Miller original.
Yes.
So this is how we're going to do it, folks. When this episode goes live, we're going to post it on Instagram. And what we want you guys to do is to tag a friend that you would like to share this episode with. And also write the word play and creativity. And then we're going to do a drawing. And so Jen is going to send that mug to the winner, and you will have a Jen Miller original. So, Jen, we just are so grateful that you offered to do that and that you're participating in our first ever giveaway. And I'm just really excited to see who the winner is. And
Us too.
Somebody enjoys it. I just want somebody to,
yes,
like what they get. But yeah,
they'll love it. They'll love it.
They
I mean,
will.
I love all the pieces that I see you posting on Instagram. And speaking of, I'm wondering if you could share with our listeners who are interested in learning a little bit more about you and your work and just, pottery in general. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So I have an Instagram, Jen Miller Ceramics on
Mhm.
Insta. I have a website, jenmillerceramics.com, which I'm starting to really feel with more pieces. It's just getting started because I have technical difficulties. But I normally have sold at market so far with Nevada Clay Guild. So this is all new to me selling online, but I'm really excited to start because I need to challenge myself in trying to do this,
Yeah.
And really, I always say, I understand there's some amazing potters out there and far more talented than I am. And I myself just think of it as like, if anyone wants this stuff that I'm making, I'm accumulating a lot. So I'm trying to get it out of the house. I'm not thinking that I'm just like, something that's so wonderful because I still have a lot to learn, to be honest, which I think actually everyone is always. There's people in my classes that have been doing it 30 years and they're still learning. So
yeah. I love it. Yeah. And you're never really finished either.
No.
That's the other thing that I'm taking away from this is that there's not really like an end destination to be like the best potter ever, right? It's kind of like mental health. You're never really fully done. You're just always kind of working towards something and refining your craft. And so I love that you have a website too, Jen. We will link that. We're going to link your Insta along with your website and then the giveaway. And like I said, I feel like, well, it truly is catching up with an old friend. I feel like we could talk forever about just life in general and raising kids and creativity and anxiety and all the things. And just, it always reminds me how grateful I am to have had such a close community of women during a time in my life where it was hard. And it still is from time to time with parenting, but just to be able to call you guys up or text you all these years later and know that we knew each other so intimately at that time of our lives where, like you said, Jen, I literally don't think I would have made it without my group of people. I tell Sarah that all the time because Sarah and I didn't know each other during that time. And I was like, that was my lifeline. And so I'm just so grateful for your friendship and staying connected with me and again, being willing to come on our little pod and
No, we love it.
It really, thank you for saying that, Cindy. It truly, I just hope you know what you mean to me as far as that. That's a time I will never forget in my life. And the gratitude I have for you and the girls is just exponential because raising little babies with no family, no help. I mean, we just really, really depended on each other and I'm forever grateful.
Oh,
So
thank you. This is gonna, I didn't like expect myself to feel so weepy during this episode, but I just have learned so much. I know Sarah and I have just, we've been so excited for this to have you on, and thank you for hanging in there with us when we were having some technical difficulties. No, it was us. It was us. And I adore you, Jen Miller. It's just
I do
such a
too.
great,
meeting you, Sarah.
Great meeting
combo.
you, Jen.
Yes,
I've heard wonderful
everybody.
things, so it was lovely to put
Mhm.
a face with a name.
Yes. Yes. Thanks again, Jen, for your time. And
What you
like
two
I
are
said,
doing, it's so helpful, especially when I'm having, a day. Listening to your podcast really, really is so, you guys don't know how much it helps. Just know that you are touching people out there for sure.
Thanks,
Thank
Jen.
you.
Well, we've loved it. Y'all go check out Jen Miller Ceramics and enter to win one of her mugs. And I will be
Play and creativity.
Yes, I'll be talking to you, Jen. Good to see you.
You too.
Thank you, Jen. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If this podcast resonated with you, it would mean so much to us if you'd be willing to take a few minutes of your time and do a couple of things. First, can you please follow or subscribe to the Unmasking podcast? This is helpful for you because you'll never miss an episode. So to do this, go to the Unmasking podcast show page on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and share an episode that you loved with a friend, we would be so grateful. The Unmasking podcast is created and hosted by Cindy Payne and Sarah Vaught. And you can also find more information by logging on to our website, theunmaskingpodcast.com. There you will see opportunities to subscribe as well as apply to be a guest on our show. As always, we're so grateful for you, and we hope you join us next week for a new episode. Thank you.